Welcome to the Quantum City Initiative, a show about the most important stories, ideas at the intersection of AI, cities, real estate, and the leaders shaping the future of how and where we live and work. Do you save and reinvigorate cities, or are you building new ones?
What is most critical for cities in the future with this sort of AI factory race to work? All right, welcome to the show, episode 12. Things are good. Strata's 1 week away. We're going to get to that. By the time this comes out, it'll be the next day. How you doing today, Chase?
This is not my ideal time. This is later in the day. I'm not a late in the day guy, so we'll see if I can make it.
Welcome to the Quantum City Pod. We're excited. Last week, we talked about the data center liquidity trap. There was actually a lot of action last week, but here we are. We're still going to stay on track with the data center. We're going to talk about AI bubbles. Everybody admits it's a bubble. However, it's very different. Bezos, everybody's got a bunch of opinions. It's not like the dot-com crash. We're going to get to that. We got a bunch of quick hits. Lab space decline. We're going to talk about Irvine. We're going to talk about Brookfield. One more bit of news is actually going to be devastating for you, Chase. I'm glad you haven't read the show notes, which is good because it'll be a surprise for you, which is exciting.
Yeah.
I do have one quick funny story to kick things off about the pod before we get to our Strata plug and we get going. So I coach, you know this, I coach my 8-year-old hockey team. Okay. So in the locker room last weekend, I put on some music, listen to Pink Pony Club and Thunder and all that sort of stuff, right? Through my phone. Well, I went out to go check to see if the ice was ready and I must have disconnected the Bluetooth. So I went back in and I just clicked play on my phone, just on the home screen, right? Thinking that was just going to put Pink Pony Club back on for the boys to get them all fired up before
For you.
big tilt versus Hingham. Well, the pod started playing on the speaker. So these are 8-year-olds. They can't tie their own skates. So every parent in the locker room just kind of looked up to me and said, "Greg, are you listening to yourself? What are you doing? What is it that you're listening?"
Little promo.
Little promo. So we got the U8 hockey team out of Duxbury's parents, now biggest fans of the show. I do have to explain to them that I don't just listen to myself throughout the day talk. But other than that,
Or you do, you're like, I just don't usually do it at hockey.
But other than that, we got some new listeners. Okay, let's get going. Strata plug. That's it. We're 1 week out. When you see this video, when you listen to us, it's going to be the next day. We're super excited. Again, last chance to register. We got 200 plus people coming. Phenomenal event the night before. We've been on all the panel prep calls. The content is going to be exquisite. Anything to add, Chase, before we get going?
No, it's just a hell of a lineup. Even though we're at capacity, naturally, I'm assuming some people will have to drop because life happens. So still get on the list and make it over to MIT if you can.
It's going to be a good day. Next Thursday. Okay. Or this Thursday, whenever you watch this thing live. So the anchor story today, the big story everybody's been talking about. We've been talking about it every single week. Last week's episode, I think you actually made this noise, or how the hell do you do that? Yeah, there it is. Or I don't know how to do that. But so there, that's a bubble. That's a pop. The AI industrial bubble. It's everywhere this week. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody is admitting that there's likely a bubble of some sort. However, it's different. Even Jeff Bezos, this is kind of an industrial bubble. Everybody, however, it's different. Why is it different this time? Okay, let's talk about it for a second. The dot-com was a financial bubble, okay? Valuations were propped up. This industrial and this AI data center bubble is obviously financially driven, but they're building hard infrastructure and hard assets, which is why it's different. Real technology is being developed. Real infrastructure is being built. So as much as we joke about, and we'll have Justin put up this image of the round tripping, this one, everybody admits, fundamentals are a little out of whack. Prices are high. It's an insane amount of money, but it's different. What's your take? Is it different?
When everybody starts to say it's a bubble, that's when I start to rethink my position on it. So very rarely does the whole world call a bubble.
And yet still pour money into it. The stock market's still flying. They're like, this is a bubble, but you know what? Here's another $100 bill.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world and headlines of the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and all these places didn't have these headlines running right before the dot-com. They didn't have them running right before the great financial crisis. So
Ooh,
that
ooh.
that makes me take a little pause, and now I'm gonna have to go and do some of my own work on this, because very rarely bubbles inherently pop because people aren't paying attention. So I think from Bezos, I'll come back to Bezos. I think the big thing when the leaders in the space are calling something a bubble, oftentimes you have to wonder if they're quote unquote talking money out of the market. You get to the leadership position, you try to close the door behind you. So you talk money out of the market such that,
I like that take.
yeah. So I forget who said this, but Sam Altman and I think other people, have reason to, from where they play, talk money out of the market. Um, so I think I take everything he says with a grain of salt, because where OpenAI sits, they're where a lot of competition is coming after them. Now, he just signed a deal with, is it TSMC? I forget the name of the company. It's a little NVIDIA competition. There's a company that makes chips called Grok that Chamath Palihapitiya is backed. That's a little NVIDIA competition. But for the most part, you know, the NVIDIA folks talk money into the market to keep demand up. I think the demand for where OpenAI sits, the question will be, a lot of it is in these R&D budgets from these big companies. And I think the most interesting thing that you have written down here is this like MIT study that most corporate co-pilots are underwhelming. So is that where the, misallocation, too much money, not yet gaining the productivity gains or whatever it is that their business case for underwriting this, is that where you start to see compression over the next year or two?
Yeah, I mean, so on the R&D thing, we've talked about this, right? Even us as a company, when we were looking at we're planning, looking at budgets for next year, we're overpaying for AI, right? We're trying out a bunch of tools. There's a significant R&D budget. So the amount we spend as a company will go down next year, likely, unless we scale and try other things. But the reality is we're going to stop double paying for certain things. However, you can't argue that the amount of money going into some of these companies is a little silly. So AI startups raised $105 billion in the first half of 2025, as much as all startups in 2024. It's obviously outrageous. Tech companies as a whole, we just talked about, they're projected to spend almost $500 billion this year on AI infrastructure. Okay. 6-person companies, and even Orlando Bravo came out and said, you can't have a company doing, I forget what his exact quote was, but it was something like, 5 million ARR getting $1 billion valuation. These companies, these 6-person companies are getting $1 billion valuations. Now, I don't think the comparison is 6-person to $1 billion obviously has to be a revenue-based thing. But even this past week, you saw the quantum computing stocks, which, and we'll put the tickers in there, and the only reason why I know this is they're called quantum computing. So like quantum is in the name. They were like meme stocks, right? They were up 30, 40, 50%. Then somebody did a little analysis and showed the headquarters of the quantum computing stocks and companies that were rising. They were garages. There was really nothing there. While this may or may not be a bubble, the technology, the infrastructure, all of it's real. There's a lot of people, I think, that are going to get rug pulled and fleeced just on the fringes. That's what I'm fearful of, because right now, I saw another quote that it's easier and more cost effective for an individual coming out of high school to just start an AI company than to go to college and get a job anywhere else. Just literally start something, startup.ai, and you've sealed your future. That's my fear, is the fringes are going to get hurt. Not necessarily the entire market. It's the fringes of the market are going to get hurt.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, when somebody like Orlando Bravo, who runs one of the most successful software private equity shops, that's trying to catch this S-curve of, AI, if you're not in the hardware stack, is basically just better SaaS, better software. He says you can't have a 6-person company with a $1 billion valuation. That's not true. You can.
Right.
We do. Like, they're getting them. They can't be a 6-person company with a $1 billion valuation that is going to sell for $1 billion to one of Orlando Bravo's platform companies or to one of his funds. He won't pay that price. So I understand his point, but I don't think it's quite accurate. You can. And I think it's funny. I listened to Roloff, the guy who runs Sequoia, and his talk at the All In Summit. And he said, there's too much money in venture. Talk about talking money out of the market. I don't think there's too much money in venture, just because the failure rate of companies will naturally increase, because, he did the math being like, look, to get the appropriate venture return, you have to, depending on how much capital you raise, you have to exit over $1 billion, over 10 billion, whatever the math is in terms of how much that company's raised. Now, more companies playing for that, I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing because it creates more competition if you are a VC and you have to pay higher prices, and it increases the return that you need to get to return your fund. It puts strain on the venture model. But in the grand scheme of, if we take venture out of it and we're not necessarily focused on, is it good for the VC's business? Is it a bad thing that a lot of people go out, build something, maybe they fail, maybe they learn, maybe there's some ancillary benefits from learning and job creation over a 5-year cycle, whatever?
Of course there is.
I don't know. I think it's too narrow of a view to only look at venture returns. And then there is always the story. You're right about that. I think your comment on the fringe piece is spot on. There's way more failures than successes. But what happens when more money comes into the space is there's always a new emerging player in, the money management game of venture capital that makes a bet that everybody thinks is great. Oh, they paid too high of a price.
Right.
It makes them, it takes them into the top decile or top quartile or whatever, which is where all the returns in venture sit. And so the example is Yuri Milner. When Yuri did the Facebook deal, I think it was like 15 billion valuation or 12 or whatever it was, everybody was like, who's this crazy Russian guy that nobody knew, that was nobody? And everybody was like, 15 billion, they're never going to be that. And look at Facebook now. So somebody pays a high price that other people don't see for the breakout company, and then they earn brand recognition, and they, get the gravitational pull into other great brands. And then there's another competitive firm in the, in the top tier. So
my only counter to that is there's too much money at the top right now, and it's too hard for younger funds, I guess, smaller funds to raise. I mean, and I listened to that chat, and I think Sequoia is no doubt OG, and they're unbelievable, and they are obviously a brand name, and their returns speak for themselves. Honestly, as I was listening to that, I was like, oh, they're just defending their book and their strategy that's different than Andreessen
talk
Horowitz.
money out of the market. Yeah. So
It's just, but I was just like, it's just very different than Andreessen Horowitz, which is just pour money on new fund, billions of dollars. Let's print the fee machine. So maybe, but anyways, I think, oh, by the way, this Italian tech week where David Solomon, Goldman Sachs, Jeff Bezos, all I think about, like when I just hear Italian tech week, I got wonderful pictures of all these guys just sitting there having some spaghetti, a little red wine. Like, I don't know. It's just, that's all I see.
it's Italy. It's a good tech week to go to. There's a lot of them. If you're going to go to any, why not Italy?
I think the only thing that's scary, and I think the bubble conversation is certainly overblown, and we certainly can contribute to it, the many viewers that we get. I think the only thing that does scare me about this one, and now that, once you break it out like you have, and we talk about the physical infrastructure that's being developed, the types of technology that is being developed, the types of change that's happening, I guess the other thing that scares me outside of the fringe conversation is the impact to commercial real estate. Because if this does have some sort of massive reset, and all this billions of dollars that are funding it's going direct into land. It's literally going direct into infrastructure and commercial real estate. What happens when that dries? That's my fear, is not necessarily a tech bubble, 99, whatever it may be, market crash. It's what are the impacts in the broader commercial real estate market? Because that can ripple through for a much longer period.
I think that's a very interesting point, because this is going to be the first time you saw it a little bit when office leasing, whatever, coming out of the GFC, tech as a tenant category wasn't what it is today. And so office leasing was pegged to much more what I would say stable and longer time horizon industries, financial services, other professional services. And then the leasing fluctuations, because tech is so disruptive, because it's so fast, the ups and downs of tech, where this like venture was this small cottage industry, now it's becoming institutionalized. That was correlating commercial real estate more directly to the technology industry, and it's disruptive. This is one for one. So like the ups and downs, because it's data centers, if we think this is going to be a bumpy ride, then commercial real estate is going to experience what is this, fast-paced disruptive industry. And it's, do you want to dance in, the Wild West of data centers are hot, they're not hot, they're hot, they're not hot? That'll be an interesting one to watch, because just as quickly as data centers in, like it took a little while for industrial to be like, all right, is it as hot as we thought, in lab and stuff like that?
Right.
Data centers already, wait, can we get liquidity? Is this gonna,
one of your quotes that you use all the time is the best thing and the worst thing about commercial real estate is that it moves slow.
feature and a bug.
Right now, what you're talking about is it moving fast, a little too fast.
The one thing I disagreed with Bezos on, where he's,
I'll actually call him up and let him know, but keep going.
yeah, hopefully he's watching like he normally does, where he said this is different because it's good because we're building things, and either way we're going to get infrastructure. That's kind of being like, we'd fund a bunch of code that doesn't get used. Just because it's physical things doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I guess you could repurpose it, but I do think where he's saying it's different, like, sure, everything's different. Nothing is completely the same. But at the same time, this is kind of the, like, every new technology that has promise goes through this overhype. Then everybody becomes overly cynical when the hype doesn't immediately match reality. And then the real winners emerge. We saw this with the internet and the .com. We've seen it to some degree with crypto. We're seeing it with AI, where it's, you have Altman one day being like, we're basically at super intelligence, and general intelligence and super intelligence and all these different terms that, like, unless you follow the game, people are like, I don't know the difference between those. He'll say we're at super intelligence, and then he'll be like, but we're also in a bubble. And, there's going to be some people getting burned, and then it's going to come out. But it takes change management is never factored in. Like the rest of the world that doesn't eat, sleep, and breathe tech needs to catch up to things. Like, so I think we're following a similar pattern of the hype comes down. You need to get your ROI. It's not coming out of R&D budgets. Like, I think a lot of that's going to be similar. It's just probably going to be on different time horizons.
I'm sure next week's show, there'll be some new developments on this. Hopefully not a market crash. Can't imagine that'll be. It's going to move slower, but we'll see. One idea coming up, the next two stories here. I don't know why I didn't think of this one. Both love it and absolutely hate it. Okay. We've talked about where data centers should go, right? Or where they're going. They're popping up in suburban markets. We have somebody who's going to be on the stage at Strata that's taking, what their thesis is we're going to put some of these data centers in Class A towers in cities. And so they're just finding pockets to put them in. Alaska, never been. Beautiful, by the way. So I've seen on the bear cams and the photos. Their pitch is, let's just throw them all up there because it's cold. You can cool it. We do have some energy issues, but let's put all of the data centers in Alaska. Why not? Land there's plenty of it. What do you think? Good pitch by the governor?
I like that I don't know if Alaska is secondary or if they're second, third, fourth I don't know, type of market. But I do like that the non-primary markets have a play on this. So I think that's good. I do think
Sure.
there's a
Yeah.
great opportunity for these hollowed out industrial areas
Mm.
to reinvigorate. So I think that's a very good thing. I think socially, if you just think about, there's been too much wealth concentration in kind of the coastal elite cities. So if this is something that will bring a little bit more parity, if you will, I think that's a good thing.
North to Alaska. Okay.
Love Alaska. I think if it's cold, obviously that's a benefit. Makes
I
sense.
just love that, go to Alaska, get some of the best salmon fishing in the world, and then just go take a little tour of a data center. Why not? Okay.
Shout out to our colleague Shelley. She eats salmon every day.
Love salmon. I love the pitch by Governor Mike Dunleavy. Not to be outdone. Okay. Another idea I wish I had. I don't actually like this one. Terrifying. But China, okay.
Hmm.
They're thinking underwater data centers.
Why don't you
Cool.
like?
I'm an ocean guy.
I
See
know.
behind me?
You're a scuba. Big
like
scuba.
shark.
You're an
Right?
underwater scuba.
I don't need, you have a scuba? I don't need my sharks swimming around in data centers. Okay. I think we got to separate. So that's my NIMBYism. All right. Like I will say we don't understand anything about the ocean,
No.
the insanity with the trenches and the depths that are there, the space, the infinite abyss of space is more explored than our own ocean. Okay. We need to first get a handle on that. But I can't imagine data centers being put underwater is going to be good for our environment and our fishy friends. I get the idea. It's going to cool it down. I'd rather than be up in Alaska than I guess underwater. Although if it's off China's coast, maybe I'm okay with it. But
It's all one world, man. I don't know. I like experiments. I don't love electrical being underwater, but then again, we got cables
yeah,
running
we got
on
cables.
and all that stuff. Fascinating story from a guy who knew about the ships. These guys stand on ships and they just would go back and forth across oceans, rolling out cable. So I would say, like, in terms of percentage wise, I would challenge, I bet we have seen more percent of the ocean than we have space, but I follow what you're saying there.
We'll follow up on that. Now, here's my idea. Breaking news. We're going to pitch Musk this. Let's put the data centers in space.
I'm sure he's already thinking about that.
I don't know how we're going to get the energy back and forth, the data back and forth, but I think it's something.
It's not nothing. It's not nothing.
Definitely not nothing. All right, let's get back on track with commercial real estate. We could do a whole show on the ocean. Brookfield, I guess speaking of the north, above the wall, our friends from Alaska, Brookfield just raised a $20 billion global transition fund. This is continuing the trend. Every week here, we talk about a couple of new funds that are raising money. This is great. This is good. More money for commercial real estate.
Yeah. I mean, look, we covered their investor report, I don't know, a month or two ago.
Yep.
The transition fund. I mean, there is so much, they started like over 100 years ago as essentially like a infrastructure company that I believe, if I have this correctly, they brought a bunch of infrastructure that was needed in Brazil. So this is deep in their DNA. It seems to be across a number of things: clean power, storage, nuclear, carbon capture. Although I was just reading about how even the Europeans seem to be loosening their climate restrictions on businesses, which I think is a very good thing. This to me feels squarely in their DNA and wheelhouse, and I didn't read up about what markets and territories they'll be covering, but 20 billion is a lot of dry powder to do a lot of damage. So this will be one we'll follow closely.
Yeah. Story to keep getting richer. Love it. Pour that money in commercial real estate. One trend and headline, it's not super exciting, but it caught my eyes this week because you don't usually see 3 REITs to watch. Okay. You don't usually see 3 REITs to watch. Okay. As investments, REITs historically obviously have been battered. That's no surprise. We did a REIT breakdown a couple of shows ago. REITs generally trade below the sum of the net asset value of the assets. However, and this is certainly no investment advice, there's a handful of REITs, and we can go through them: Realty Income, Equity Residential, EQ, and then Camden Property Trust for the one specifically mentioned. But the idea here, as rates continue to come down, REITs might be a more stable buy than perhaps some of the tech stocks and the debt.
Yeah, I think, look, a lot of people simply look at this in terms of obviously the dividend yield. I think the REITs, particularly with regards to our philosophy around real estate experience, because of the way they're structured, are in a position. We talk about Alexandria a lot. We talk about Prologis a lot. The people that specialize around the customer segment and own that customer segment, cater their business to that customer segment. I think the structure of a REIT and the publicly traded REITs are in a position to do certain things from a centralized position compared to if you're a private equity fund or working deal by deal across assets. There are some structural issues to how you can cater to tenants across multiple assets. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of smart people doing that NAV math that you're talking about that catch the next cycle and do very well on it.
So this is a wild story coming up. Then we'll get back to my new favorite section, BTE, which you coined last week, Big Tower Energy, which we'll get to that. This is a wild story for a couple of different reasons. Irvine, okay, known brand name, right? Donald, 92, America's wealthiest developer, disowned his son, which is not great. All I thought about...
You say disowned.
He just he's suing him and all sorts of stuff and just yelling at him, and it's a public fight. I don't know if there's like a formal disowning. I don't even know what that means per se, and we'll get into the details. But all I kept thinking about here was, what was that reality show about who was the New York family where he got arrested as the final episode aired on Netflix? Who was the developer? Wild story.
Oh, you mean are you talking about the Jenks?
The Jenks.
Yeah,
yes.
That was HBO.
Okay, semantics. Will you talk about the Jinx for a second? You were a huge Jinx fan. Were there not parallels here?
Details matter. I mean, that's a very different story, but this one's, what I thought was interesting about this one was Donald's 92 and David is 33. Okay.
There's a funny...
I can't even remotely imagine being in my 60s having a kid. I'm 40 and I have a 18-month-old. I'm so tired.
There's a funny meme that was sent around in some group chats that I'm in, and it's terrible. It's not new. It's terrible. I do not agree with it. It's funny, and it's an older gentleman with a younger woman, and it said, "Focus on the business, King. Your future wife isn't born yet." Terrible, terrible, Donald. But here, the thing that I did...
This is where memes, the fact that memes didn't exist during that time frame, and for some of the older generation, memes can be sources of wisdom.
They certainly can. And the only thing that I really liked about this story is not the fake. So the son apparently tried to create a fake luxury members club. That's not great. But the idea behind the club, I'm all in on. It was a Soho house for car lovers. So you get a $50 million supercar fleet, activity. That is what I'm talking about. Okay. Like, we're talking sick cars, we're talking stogies, cigars, the elite, like that nature of a social club, I can get behind. Bummer that it was fake and they actually can go through with it, because I actually think there's something there. Soho's, by the way, news this week, just is being taken private because they got to fix that whole mess, because it's not necessarily an exclusive club anymore. Nobody wants to go. So maybe he walked on to something here, the 33-year-old.
I don't get the car lover thing. Yeah, I don't get it. I certainly don't get why they would need a physical club to hang out and talk about.
Because cars are physical. What?
Sure, but go drive a car, I guess? I don't know. None of it makes sense to me, but a lot of people at that age would basically just be checked out. It sounds like, if it's true, if it's a fake club, good for him in terms of accountability, I guess.
Love it. Okay, Big Tower Energy, the best news subject. BTE, Ken Griffin. Okay. So we talked about the tower wars. Mine's bigger than yours in Manhattan. This little interesting thing here. Ken Griffin, obviously the big thing in COVID was everybody go to Miami, right? Miami's the best. Okay. Citadel is doing that. But what was interesting about this story this week is Griffin's Big Tower Energy. What he had budgeted was $1 billion. for his tower. Now it's going to be about $3 billion.
That's a slight miscalculation.
Or
Slight.
he saw a little glimpse, a little tower pick of other people's towers, and he wanted to make his a little bigger.
Well, look, as everyone who listens knows, big BTE guy, I think we need more BTE energy in the United States. So I hope it's going from 1 to 253, because he's no longer just looking stateside. He's looking at everything they're building over in the Middle East and saying, my BTE isn't BTE enough.
I mean, we got some folks flying in from Dubai for Strata plug. They got the biggest BTE I've ever seen. Pale in comparison to
that Jeddah tower is currently the most BTE in the world. I mean,
so that's exciting.
Yeah,
there's a couple of tower talk. These next two stories go hand in hand because BXP plays a little bit in both. This is just a quick one. A little bit of a trend here. Boston Properties, good friends. We got an event with them next week. They're refi. The Hub's an incredible development. It's where obviously the Bruins play. Shout out hockey again. But this is just the type of activity we want to see here. Okay, we want to see refis. We want to see transactions happening. BXP refi. We love that. The terms 5.7%. Okay, maturity in a couple of years. This is good. This is a good trend.
Hey, it's a great development. I mean, it's on top of a train station, right next to a stadium, right there by the north end. Good partnership with Delaware North that runs the stadium, the Seas and the Bruins playing. The new Seas owner came out and kind of poured some cold water on the idea of moving the Celtics from the Garden. So I think that's a good thing for this development area. Obviously, if you cut the games in half, that would be problematic for the neighborhood. So like seeing good developments win. Good for them.
This one is a bummer. So we talked a little bit about this, life sciences. So lab space, okay? Lab space, again, has been hot, okay? Spec labs, BXP's been all over this. Lab space, when done right, obviously, and with the right market dynamics, can be largely successful. Alexandria, obviously, they do phenomenal in this space. Lab space has been wonderful. Did we build too much? Okay, this report here is that 19 million square feet of lab needs to be converted in the next couple of years. We overbuilt. Lab space is not an easy thing to convert. You're talking, Bunsen burners and beakers. You're talking high tech.
Those are the big problems.
This isn't just,
it's everywhere.
This isn't just sort of concrete, sort of open space, but the trend here obviously is being driven by all the money of, the sort of data center trend that we're talking about and a ton of oversupply. Is this as troubling as it sounds? I mean, people are moving out of lab. Numbers aren't great right now.
Again, I think some of the issue comes back to how the industry works, which is it's too supply focused. It's not demand focused. So you watch other people. I mean, it's not oversimplifying to say that a lot of people ran into lab because they basically said, you can't do lab work from home. And while that was true, I had a number of conversations with folks that are not your typical kind of lab operators. I just even asking, do you look at the pipeline of STEM graduates? Because in theory, you need scientists, if you will, in the space. And there wasn't much of that. If you want to get, a little bit more sophisticated, are you thinking about, government funding for R&D? Are you thinking about tracking,
venture capital inflows, investments into biotech companies and startups and all of that? I get where you're saying grant money.
How many scientists are there? How many people do lab work? Look at the census on the job roles on that. First and foremost, we need more scientists. We need more people in that space. So I think it's an upstream issue. It comes down to focus on the demand, not just because everybody else in lab, let's do lab like that. It happens time and time again. I don't know how else.
Time and time again, we kicked off the show with everybody doing what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Now it's data centers.
FOMO is real. FOMO is so real.
Yeah.
Get your own life, guys. Anyways, it's an interesting quantum story, okay? And we talk about physical infrastructure and all that fun stuff. Let's go to the Jetsons. Let's go to the Jetsons for a little bit, okay?
Yeah, love this.
Flying taxis. I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But
Such a cynic.
apparently, vertiports by Atlantic, they're looking at 2 to 3 dozen rooftops in LA to make LA commuting and traffic less. eVTOLs, they talked about it a bunch. I've seen pictures of them. I've seen it all. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work. I can't see it happening. They're saying it's as early as 2026, pending FAA approvals. Can't imagine that's going to happen. LA, though, is a disaster for any number of different reasons. And we'll get to another one in a little bit about the entertainment industry and AI, but traffic sucks there, obviously. I think this is one of those general intelligence things where somebody's going to claim that we're going to have general intelligence in 5 years, and that really means 15 years. So eVTOLs and flying taxis, we were supposed to already have, I think, in 2025. That was one of the other projections. I don't know. I think it's 20 years out. There's too much. It's too much at stake. Like, cars are dangerous on the road. I don't have to fall. We have to fall from the sky. A bunch of Jetsons things roaming around in LA. I don't know.
Yeah. First off, love this. I'm all about this. When the automobile became widely adopted, whether you want to say 50s, 60s, whatever, there was a confluence of things that came about in terms of, the interstate highway project laid the infrastructure foundation for us to become a car community, which is why the US trains suck in comparison to other areas of the world. But what it did was it created more, suburban sprawl and urban sprawl because people had cars and they could do this. If you had flying cars, the expansion of livable territory around economic zones, it'd be fascinating to watch. And the reason I'm bullish on this is because, our own governments in the West, if they were left to their own devices, would they make this happen? Absolutely not. But the folks in the Middle East, I forget if it was Abu Dhabi or where, I just read that the Cleveland Clinic is running a healthcare center. I think it's somewhere in Abu Dhabi, where they're essentially going to have these, whatever, flying cars, flying taxis, such that people can get in. It's no different than a helicopter. They just have to figure out, like traffic routing in the skies and all this stuff. So
helicopters are terrifying.
Yeah, but these are different, but not.
So let's play that clip back. They're no different than a helicopter.
But they're different.
Okay.
But
They're
not.
eVTOLs. They're not helicopters.
Yeah. So I don't see what the problem is.
Fascinating trend.
Terrified of helicopters.
I'm all about the infrastructure. I'm all about Quantum City. I'm all about this type of thinking. I'm just absolutely terrified of it. Great place to try it out.
It's gonna be sick. So like they're gonna do it in the Middle East. 2 years ago at All In Summit, they had all the flying car companies present, and they were like, yeah, the only people that work with us are in the Middle East, so that's where we're going to launch. So I think that'll put pressure on the West. The West will need to adapt. And here's why I'm bullish on the flying cars. Purely when you look at earlier we talked about the tech life cycle hype and deflation and then ultimate adoption. We were promised flying cars. I forget the name. Remember the name of the MIT company we used to cover at Boston? No, it was outside the city.
Yep.
Those guys were around in like 2005. So we're 20 years later, which means maybe we get it now.
Terra Future, everybody.
Ooh, good poll. Look at you.
Nobody Googles like by the way, I Googled. I didn't open AI yet. So there's my H right there. Googled it. Yeah, Terra Future. You're right. Spot on. I think they went out of business.
Oh, Palm Pilot was early, man. They were early.
Plan to close its U.S. operations and reestablish in China.
Rick.
That was kind of badass. That was cool. Anyways, okay. Speaking of OpenAI, this took the internet by storm this week. It's terrifying. It leads into the last sort of quick hit and story that we have on AI before one more bit of news. But OpenAI launched Sora 2. Everybody was talking about it in our office this week. What it is, it's an AI video generator similar to TikTok. It can create 10 to 20 second video clips, and it's a little bit of a social network. What was so crazy about this launch, or what happened this week, is the videos were actually pretty damn good. And there were some pretty wild videos. You talk about memes. They had Sam Altman stealing GPUs. I saw some outrageously offensive one about, it was an Olympic Games and people just like ripping bongs or something like that. Like it was at a stadium, but it looked real. It looked
good.
It might happen. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's there. People are calling this a TikTok killer. I think for people who don't follow what the kids are doing, TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance, and I believe ByteDance just shared that they are now bigger than Perspective, which these guys do way more than just TikTok. They do a ton in e-com and AI and all sorts of other stuff. I don't think it's a TikTok killer, but I mean, the product velocity at OpenAI is just insane. It's
insane. But I think the argument, though, is, and by the way, I've never logged into TikTok. I, like every real adult, you watches Instagram Reels about 10 days after they show up on TikTok. You can quote me in a minute.
I'm in TikTok. I deleted it though because it knew me too.
Exactly. But I think the argument here is you don't need to produce the content anymore. So you don't need to, after this, I'm going to hang this up and do a little dance with some music. That's what the kids do. I don't need to do that anymore. I could just type that in. That's my prompt into Sora.
Yeah.
Be me dancing to Pink Pony Club, and boom.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
Ooh, we should do that next week. We should do me dancing to Pink Pony Club.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Look, it was radio killed the video star. OpenAI killed the celebrity. It sounds like William Morris and like these talent agencies are saying their clients are, quote, opting out of their likeness being used. All right, well, you're opting out of being popular then.
So here you go.
My girl Tilly, sorry, she'll now be the celebrity. Honest move that Hollywood could be pulling if they like the arrogance of being like, we are so beautiful and so talented that, we're really going to jam up OpenAI, where OpenAI can make versions of whatever stars people want. I think they need to lean in, not lean out. I think there's
so Tilly, I forget her last name. It was something crazy, but Tilly is
like Oprah. She just goes by Tilly.
Tilly was the AI generated movie star with credits to her name. Actually, it's freaking people out that we mentioned last week. But okay, let's talk about that. Last story. How does that, by the way, wonderful segue here. The Motion Picture Association, here it comes. They're coming after OpenAI, demanding immediate action on copyright violations. Okay, so this story, whatever, doesn't really matter per se, but is this the start of it? How do you police this? How do you go after that? The videos are showing copyrighted characters. It's a matter of time until there's spinoffs of what? Star Wars and all of these sort of major hits that are owned by large brands that OpenAI is going to do what with? They're going to develop what? Spinoffs and new series and new movies and prequels of all of these, Marvel and so on. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is just, there's going to be derivative works of original works, which, the Hollywood thinking that like their original works are different. Like everybody will point to a movie being like Jack Ryan drew from Mission Impossible, which drew from James Bond or whatever. Like it's going to be what new content is going to be generated one standard deviation away, different enough that they're not going to get important. These first payments, I guarantee you, Altman sat in a meeting being like, all right, they're going to sue us. How much money are we paying? They'll say X dollars. And he'd say, I could buy X dollars worth of ads to promote this, or we'll get a bunch of earned media by them suing us. We'll just do it. And then eventually we'll, everybody's going to create new content. And this is pocket change. I think Hollywood's playing this all wrong.
I mean, Hollywood, I was listening to, I don't know what podcast, Birdcatch or something. You had somebody on and they were just talking about how nothing films in LA, obviously anymore. That's nothing new. Nobody wants to be in LA. Everybody's moving out of LA. Except for the people who want eVTOLs and flying cars. The industry, that's what it's going to have the largest shift. You think commercial real estate is going to have a massive shift? Talking about data centers and AI, the Hollywood industry, the entertainment industry is going to have the largest.
We're literally watching Detroit. When
Mhm.
challenges popped up for the auto industry because of competition from European manufacturers, Japanese car companies, all that stuff, they leaned in heavily into
Yep.
unions. As the unions started to prevent what the corporations needed to do to compete, jobs moved out, city hollowed out, and they killed the golden goose. This is competition for content creation from Hollywood's friends just up north in San Francisco. And they're leaning into, pick your star. I'm not going to pick Clooney because, that guy is, what a stud.
He's
But
an absolute
your
stud.
your A minus B list actor being like, you can't use my likeness. Fine. Who cares?
Tilly.
Yeah.
Tilly. We got new A-lister Tilly coming right
And
up.
you know what Tilly doesn't do when the camera's not rolling? Bitching.
Anything? Because she's a
Hey, I need
computer.
my latte just like this. I need
Is she
this.
like not real?
Yeah. And you're going to pay Tilly less than whoever would be competing for Tilly. So I think they
Yeah.
should be leaning into their
I
likeness.
don't know. That's something I don't know because Tilly will be paid less because she's not real. But the people behind Tilly, I got to imagine they're going to demand more than
Yeah, but
Monkey Lid.
the 4 people or whatever that create Tilly generate 1,000 Tillys. So yeah, they'll make more, but there's less of them, and there's going to be way more. You're going to be designing your own stars. So you're going to say, I want to see a movie that's like a CIA whatever, and I want the guy to be like, if Clooney were jacked. I don't know. You're going to have customized storylines to what you're
Yeah.
interested in. So it's going to be,
Clooney,
yeah. And
Clooney.
they should be leaning into this and make money while they sleep. If I were Clooney, I'd be like, dude, use my like this, send me royalties every month, and just cha-ching, let the
He's
cash
got a lot.
run.
Got a lot of royalties. I like that. Speaking of cash registers running, one more bit of news this week, 2 more bits of news this week. The first one, just cash registers, royalties running. We've talked about billionaires and what they like to do. Okay. Billionaires like to build cities. Billionaires like to do fun things. This billionaire, okay, love golf. This billionaire built a $50 million golf course on his own property so his wife could, quote unquote, swing like an idiot and practice on her own. So we talk about amenities, we talk about experiences, we talk about all the golf pods that are in all the fancy offices, the big tower energy that's there. If you're a billionaire, you just build your own golf course. Love that.
Yeah, and apparently erode your marriage by calling her an idiot, I guess.
Just got a brand new golf course. She's fine. That was probably taken out of context. It was probably taken out of context. I don't know. I'm all about this little custom golf course. Last bit of news this week, dude. This is going to hit home. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about this. The last bit of news this week. Okay. An absolutely iconic landmark is going to change. Okay. Your favorite restaurant in the world, Calhoon, is back in the news this week. Okay. So the Wong family, the owners of the iconic Calhoun restaurant in Saugus, if you've ever been, you've seen it, it's that triangle looking thing. You've been in there. There's celebrity photos, Seinfeld, everybody's in there. It's a massive, wonderful place. I think there's something like 1,200 seats in the actual space, which is just insanity. However, and a massive parking lot to obviously fit the 1,200. They're hopping on the commercial real estate bandwagon here. They're planning a little bit of a mixed use project where they're going to put 250 apartments and they're going to downsize Calhoun to a 100-person restaurant.
First off, we do a lot of joking on this show. This is a topic I would never joke about because the Calhoun is a goddamn American institution. It is one of the best places that planet Earth has ever produced. I love it there. Shout out to the Wong family. They are just some of the best restaurant proprietors in
Legends.
of restaurant propriety. And if you could come and pitch me something, I believe deeply in the mixed use trend. I believe that the anchor experience is super critical to those. And you're telling me that the anchor experience for a mixed use project is the Calhoun restaurant. I'm like, I'm not sure there's a more bulletproof investment on planet Earth today than this development. I've heard from some people that, the property for the family, it could be like 25, 30, 35 mil net to them. They've grinded out that restaurant for God knows how long. So love to see people who put in the blood, sweat, and tears into the best place on earth get paid. Love that. Don't love the downsizing of the restaurant.
Is it Calhoon?
Explored every corner of that restaurant. I love that place.
There's boats, there's fountains, there's rivers in the damn thing.
The ambiance is unmatched.
Is it Calhoun when you tear that building down? You destroy.
I mean, it looks, building's amazing. It's got like the, in Asia, the slatted roofs. It kind of looks like a dojo. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I don't know. I hope they preserve the ambiance. Now, for them, if you make it small, first off, 100 people is way too small for that place. But scarcity for their inventory, I mean, they tried to shut it down a couple of years ago and people went bonkers. It's so popular. Place is unbelievable.
I'm still
did die last time you and I were there, but that's not
picking that up because we're trying to keep the show clean. But I am swollen still from the amount of MSG,
like
the amount of MSG and the Saugus wings. But it is an institution. Okay, that was a lot that we covered. A wonderful show. Underwater data centers in space, Brookfield's fun, Boston Properties refi, a lot of action this week. Most importantly, Strata's coming up. Get the invite or get the RSVP in. It's going to be a wonderful day. Fly in, travel. We got two events, both Wednesday and Thursday night. It's going to be a great one. We're going to leave you with this. The bubble that we talked about, we let off. It's real. It is real. You did the pop and sound. I can't make that pop sound. I don't know how to do it. There it is. But the infrastructure is real. So how do we keep up? Our city strategies better be real too. Good show. Good afternoon show, man.
All right, man.
Thanks.
I'll see you.